I put a spell on you, and now you're mine. You can't stop the things I do. Ooh, I ain't lying. It's been 300 years, right down to the day. Now the witch is back, and there's hell to pay. I put a spell on you, and now you're mine. There we go. So I've just finished Hocus Pocus and the sequel. This is by A.W. Janther. So, this is two books in one, and it's a story of two halves, really. So, the first 200 pages of this is merely a novelization of the first movie, and then the next 300 plus pages is a sequel story on about the child of Max Dennison and Allison and their daughter going on an adventure. So you see the front cover is the original The Three Witches, and it says "Witch, please," and on the back it's got outlines of the three new characters from the sequel. Um, when I started reading this, the first story, spoilers for the original Hocus Pocus, by the way, it's a film that's it's almost 30 years old now. It probably is 30 years old now, actually, this year. The novelization's really not great. It does a thing where it goes between two timelines of Thackeray Binks and his daughter and his sister Emily, and then Max at the start. So they kind of run them both together, even though in the film the whole Thackeray Binks and Emily is just the prologue, and it takes only a few minutes. They really stretch it out here, which doesn't work because you know what's going to happen. And it's not even like, oh, it's going to be a car crash and you can't stop watching. It's just boring. It's and that kind of rolls into the rest of the book. It's missing the best thing about Hocus Pocus, which is Bette Midler having a fantastic time and chewing the scenery and being hilarious. Le Louvre dans la bibliothèque, when she comes out of the kiln. That's one of my favourite moments. It's missing that completely. It's missing all that charm, and I didn't enjoy it. The first part, the first 200 pages of the original story, I was like, oh, this is a slog. This isn't good. Yeah. If you pick up this book, just skip that first bit. There's two things. Basically, yeah, two things that it adds. One is Emily Binks walks past someone as she is going out to the village, to the Sanderson house, and she's been like hypnotized. She goes out and she walks past a woman, and you don't know who that woman is. That's one thing. And then you find out that the spell book is owned after Winifred Sanderson by someone called Elizabeth Sanderson. That's all you need to know. That's the only things that are added. Everything else, the dialogue's the same, but it's not being acted, so it just doesn't have that charm. The plot's the same. Yeah, just skip it. I would honestly just skip it. It really doesn't add anything. Then you get into the sequel, and this is where the book really gets going. So, we have Max and Allison. It's their daughter, Poppy. It's her best friend, Max, and then her kind of love interest. She kind of fancies them. There's a thing. Her friend whose name I've forgotten off the top of my head. Let's see if I could just open a page. Oh, so his name's not Max. That's the dad. I'm stupid. His name is Travis, and he's a nerd basically. And then you've got Isabella. Isabella is the love interest. And I'm going to hold like this, so helps remind me. Her parents, obviously the thing with the Sanderson sisters happened, and her parents hate Halloween, and they're really superstitious, and she thinks this is just a joke, and she's embarrassed by her family's kind of view on Halloween. She thinks it's so embarrassing how they think magic is real, and it's not just a bit of fun. But it's a blood moon, a red moon, and her parents are throwing a Halloween party, which she thinks is very strange. She realizes that actually this is because her parents are really worried about everybody and want to keep an eye on them and make sure everyone's safe during this blood moon in case the witches come back. And she's like, that's not going to happen. And she likes photography. That's kind of her interest. We get to know Poppy really well. Then we have her friend Travis, who is definitely a side character. He's there for quips. He's there to bounce ideas off Poppy to boost her up. He doesn't really add that much more. And then we have Isabella. Isabella is a character who is really interesting because she's super popular. She's super driven. She's going to be president. You know, she's one of those people. And there's a romance between her and Poppy, which is obvious from the get-go that Poppy really fancies Isabella. It's pretty obvious from the reader that Isabella fancies Poppy, so there's like a, ooh, you know, they're flirting and being awkward and anxious around each other, which is fun to read. But she suddenly becomes really interested in the witches, the Sanderson sisters, and I read it and was like, oh, this is nefarious. But I'm not going to spoil, but she becomes interested, and then you get into this world of the witches come back. I'm not going to spoil how it happens because I think that's one of my favourite moments of the book. Is the main characters do something which they think has zero consequences. Actually, it has loads. They are tricked, and they're tricked in such a clever way, in a way that both makes sense in the world, but also makes sense from a plot perspective, because now it's all on these three to solve the problem. And the witches come back, and they are loving it. They're larger than life. I get much more of their character through this new dialogue than the written dialogue from the first movie. I can see Bette Midler. I can see Sarah Jessica Parker. I can see Kathy Najimy doing these roles. Mary, Kathy Najimy's character, actually gets a full-blown musical number in this book. And I've never read a book that has a full-blown musical number in it. I loved that. I thought that was brilliant. And they're out to do, basically, they've got similar plans, as in they just want to survive, but the magic is slightly different, so they're looking to do something else, which is nice. It's not just a rerun. And it ends up being the plot. There's two MacGuffins. There's the spell book, which we all know with the eye on it, and then there's a bloodstone, I think it's called, which has got all of their magic, a big source of magic, and they need that to do the spell that they want to do to rule the world. That's kind of their goal, and it ends up being a bit of a runaround in that, like, these guys start off with the book, then they lose the book, but they get the bloodstone, and then these guys take over, and there's quite a bit of back and forth between the two groups as they're trying to do their thing. We get some fun of Sarah gets an iPhone, and she thinks it's got a picture of an apple on it, and tries to bite it. Like, they use technology because they don't know what it is, but they think of it as magic, so they can use technology in quite interesting ways. And then the plot progresses. There's a school bully character who does get a bit of good kind of character progression in an interesting way. It shows that these are teenagers and they're complicated, and it's not just like she's a bully, so she's horrible. She's really popular, so she's horrible. It's different. You know, the characters are actually quite three-dimensional. I would say Travis is the least three-dimensional, but he's just there for jokes and things like that, and that's okay. He does his role well. Then there's some interesting things with this new Elizabeth Sanderson. She plays quite a big role in it, which is really interesting. I love how they link the two timelines together of the two films. They do it in a way that is interesting and not just, hey, let's just do the same film again. I really like that. And then the finale, the climax, they just up the stakes. They really up the stakes. And I think it's great. I think it's really, really good. It's fun. It's family friendly. You know, there's no swearing or death or anything like that that's bad. And I think it's a really, really good Halloween read. In terms of, we now have, the sequel is completely different to Hocus Pocus 2 that came out on Disney Plus last year. We watched that, and I enjoyed it while watching it, again, because I'm just enjoying the witches having a great time, and I don't really remember that much about the plot. I do remember they get stuck in a CVS for ages, and and being like, this is dragging a little bit. So in terms of the 4 pieces of Hocus Pocus media, I would say the number 1 film is number 1, Hocus Pocus the film. Then I would say the sequel book, number 2. Then I would say the sequel film, and then number 4 I would say the novelization of the first book, because that I would just skip it, especially because I think the thing about Elizabeth Sanderson, who owns the book, you find that in the sequel story anyway. So I don't know. It doesn't add anything. You could just say that, and then it's golden. So skip the first book, skip the novelization of Hocus Pocus, and just read the all new sequel, because it's really, really good. So overall, I gave this book 4 stars, but I think it would probably be 2 stars, then 5 stars. So, yeah. Happy, very delayed, happy Halloween. Bye.